But you got to get over yourself. You know, you got to get over whatever's holding you back and just get out there and take action. Faith knocked at the door. Fear knocked at the door. Faith answered and nobody was there. Fear. Faith is a fact accepted in the heart. Fear is, the minute you face fear, it's chicken. It tucks its tail and it runs away from you. You don't have to be perfect. You really don't have to know what you're doing in this business if you just go out there. Let me give you an example. The first guy in our business that we sponsored, other than the recruiter that went with Ron that night, was a guy named Willie Bass. He lived next door to us. Willie had a 4th grade education. He couldn't read and write. He had no belief in himself at all, but he had belief in Ron Hale. He told Ron, he said, Ron, I'll invite the people if you'll draw those circles. He said, I can't remember numbers. He said, I can't write. And so Ron said, Willie, you put people in front of me and I'll help you. Well, Ron did that. For 8 months, he drew every circle for Willie. He helped Willie every way he knew how to help him. But there come a day when Ron had a meeting booked. Willie needed him to go somewhere, and Ron said, Willie, you can do it. You've watched me for 8 months. You can really do this meeting. Well, his brother had invited people to a little trailer down in North Carolina, and Willie went down to do his brother's meeting. Ron went over, and Willie had 3x5 cards that he had stick figures drawn on. And Ron had written some numbers up there for him so that he'd kind of jog his memory. Willie had been a welder in the shipyard for 29 years. When he got in this business, the doctor said he didn't have very long to live because his lungs was eat up with silicosis and all that other stuff that gets down in there from welding. They didn't give him long to live. But he made them, he was unbelievable. He went down in there scared to death to do this meeting down in North Carolina, terrified to do it. He told me that he was so scared. His knees were shaking so hard that he looked down and his shoelaces had come untied. That's scared, isn't it? He went down there. He put his 3x5 cards up on a shelf. When the people came in, there was like 5 or 6 people that came to his brother's meeting. Willie was ready to get started. He reached up to get his cards, and he was so scared and so nervous that the cards scattered all over the floor. He didn't even have the intelligence to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, however many he had. They just went everywhere, and he couldn't put them back in any kind of order. When he was telling me this story, my heart was going out to him because I knew how terrified he was. And then he said, Toby, he said, I got up there and he said, I said, Willie, what did you do? He said, well, I remembered what Ron had told me about this business and how it's a business of hope. He said, a lot of people think it's a soap business, but it ain't. It's a hope business. He said, and I started telling them about being a welder. And he said, they lowered me by my heels down in the inner bottoms of those ships to do the welding. And how I was going to be a millionaire and that this business was going to help me do it and it could help them do it. He said, but after about 15 minutes, he said, people got up and walked out. Well, my heart was breaking for this man because I knew the terror that had been down inside of him when he went down there. And I said, Willie, I said, what'd you do? He said, well, it was all right. He said, because after about 10 minutes, they came back and they brought people. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, and I had to start all over again. He said, but after about 15 minutes, they got up and left. He said, but after a few minutes, they brought a whole bunch of people back with them. This man that didn't know one number from another, nothing he put on the board matched what he said. Nothing came out correctly. He did not draw perfect circles. All he did was tell them how much he believed in it. And all of a sudden, this man that was so terrified to do it in one night, his first night drawing circles, sponsored 39 people, 39 applications. Now, did they get in because of what he knew? Did they get in because he did it perfectly? No. They got in because he cared. He believed. People follow people who believe in them, who know where they're going, who are going someplace. People are absolutely wanting leaders today so bad, And I am so fired up and excited about you in this business because I know that you are the ones that's going to keep America free and the flag flying the way it's supposed to be because your attitudes are right. And you're out in the living rooms every night. Get out there and enter into the people's lives. Whether you know what you're doing or not, it really don't matter. Because the minute you start finding out what those people's dreams are, you know you've got the way to make those dreams come true. And go after, teach them to go after their dreams. This is dream night. A dream is God tapping at the door of our mind, trying to give us greater good. And you and I can say yes, or we can say no. You have that right. But for God's sakes, chase your dreams, because that's how you stay excited. That's how you get made. That's how you become the people that God intends you to be, is by going after your dreams, by not letting anybody take them away from you, from looking down deep inside of your heart and inside of your guts and determining that you're a winner, that nobody has the right to take this thing away from you, and you don't have the right to let them. And they will try. The second month in the business, Ron said, honey, we need to go down in the mountains and show my uncles this business. I looked at him, and we didn't have any money to put. It was 425 miles. We had no money to put gas in the gas tank. And I said, Ron, how are we going to get there? He said, well, I thought we'd take the $25 food budget and we'll put the gas in the gas tank and go show them the business. See, as a wife and a mother, I could see us coming back. What are we going to feed the kids? I could see them starving, the kids. But I had to make a decision. I had to make a choice. I looked at Ron and I saw the yearning on his face, and he loved his uncles and he knew they would get in. And I said, okay, let's do it. So we packed peanut butter sandwiches, and I fixed water and Kool-Aid to feed the kids on the way down there. And we drive 425 miles to his granny's house over in Bristol, Virginia. And Ron's uncles were going to meet us over there, and his aunts. His aunts come in and sit down in the living room, and I'm in there with them. Ron's in the kitchen with his uncles, and I can hear them talking. And I'm trying to talk to his grandma about how she's feeling and recipes and kids and all the things that women talk about. And I can hear them. They have jacked Ron up against the side of the wall in the kitchen, and here's what I heard. Ronnie, you don't have any education. What makes you think you could be a businessman? Ron, you and Toby, there's no way that Amway Corporation can pay you that kind of money and still stay in business. They would not let him draw the first circle. They would not even give him a chance to talk about his dream and what this business had meant to us. They were mean. And I'm thinking, okay, Ron's his own man. He can fight his own battles and he can handle it, and they were his uncles. And all of a sudden, his aunt must have heard the same conversation I was hearing, because she looked over at me and she said, Amway, huh? Well, I don't let people like you in my front door. I've got a wonderful husband. He's the sweetest thing in this world. But I got to tell you that I ain't. I got so angry. I got so mad. You see, we had taken $25 food money. We had put it in the gas tank to drive 425 miles to show them the greatest thing God had given us to help us financially that had ever been placed upon this earth. And here she was saying she wouldn't let somebody like me in her front door. And I have to tell you that hell flew in me. And I looked at her and I said, you ain't got to worry about me coming to your front door, because all my customers are very carefully selected. And then I got up. I was so angry down inside. I got up and I took across the room after her. She was sitting across the room. And I got over there and I was this close to her. And I would have had her by the hair of the head. She would have been out on the floor, and I would have beat the stupid out of the woman. And all of a sudden, I felt my sweet husband at my elbow, and he said, honey, I think we need to go. 1 second, and I would have had her. I still to this day have dreams about just beating it out of her. But you know what happened? Up to that time, it was Ron's business and I was helping Ron. But when that happened, all of a sudden it became my business too. And I determined that no matter what happened, no matter who laughed, see, I believe that God gives you a fighting spirit. And I believe that things like that come against you. Maybe it's an uncle, maybe it's an aunt, maybe it's a dad. I don't care who it is. I believe that God gave you a fighting spirit down inside of you that should stand up, and you should be willing to fight for your dreams and fight for this business and know that you're on the side of right and who you're becoming because of this business. And all of a sudden, when we got out in the car, I would never have let her see me cry. I was so hurt. I was upset with Ron's uncles for what they were saying to him, because he's a wonderful man. They had no right to tell him that he didn't have enough education to build this business. It doesn't take education. It takes dreams and guts to build this business. And all of a sudden, we get out in the car with 3 little kids sitting in the back seat. And I looked at Ron and I said, Ron, why did they say those things to us? Why? And he looked at me and he said, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what they say. We're going home and we're going to build our business. And all of a sudden I was all right, because they didn't take his dream away. They didn't take my dreamer away from me again. The military did. Almost lost him because we quit dreaming. But his uncles didn't take it away from him. And I kept my dreamer, and the kids heard their dad. They were sitting in the back seat, and I know their eyes were big because they had heard and seen what just happened. But all of a sudden, when he said Dad, 3 little kids sitting in the back seat knew their dad was a winner and that we were going to win at this thing no matter who came against it. We weren't going to quit. And you've got to get that attitude. This business, everything in this business, it's too important. It's too important to screw around with. I guess that's the only way I know how to say it. If it's too blunt for you, tough. I really don't care. It's too important. You're too important. The people whose lives you're going to influence is too important. You need to start stretching for your goals. You need to start striving for where you want to go, no matter how painful it is. And sometimes it gets painful. When Ron and I were just trying to go direct, it was painful because he had to make a decision. He had to make a commitment that he was going to get out of the military and he was going to be a full-time husband and a full-time dad. Well, we tried to go direct. We thought we were putting energy and effort into it, but it didn't happen the month we said it was going to. Did we slow down? No. You know what we did? We went out and we doubled our efforts the next month. We didn't stop. We didn't slow down. We didn't let what happened last month influence us in any way except to make us want it worse. And so we went out the next month and doubled our efforts. Did it happen that month? No. That was January. What were we going to do? Ron had to make a decision in March. Is he going to stay in for another 4 years? Is he going to get out? February came. We doubled our efforts again. You see, no matter what you think you're doing, you can always do a little bit more. We started doing 3 meetings on Saturday instead of just on Saturday night. After church on Sunday, we started doing it after church on Sunday and before training union. And every night we could get a meeting, and sometimes we'd book 2 meetings a night. You can always do a little bit more than what you thought. Was it disappointing not to do it in December and January? Yes. But you got to step up over your disappointments and go on to what you know needs to be done. And to set the goal, you don't change the goal, you just reset it and go for it again. When Ron and we went direct in February, but not the middle of February, not the 3rd week of February, the last second of the last day of February. It went over. And I think that was just God testing us to make sure we had the guts to get it. Because the people you see in this business, like Fred and Linda, they're special people. They're people that don't quit if they don't meet the goal this month, they don't drop the goal. They just reset it and go for it again next month. And that's what winners are made out of. And you've got to make up your mind if you're going to win or lose at this thing. You gotta every day decide, am I going to prospect that person, or am I going to let my fear hold me back? Am I going to go out and make that sale, or am I just going to forget it? Am I going to go out and set a goal to reach my goal this month? Am I going to do that? Or am I just going to say, well, it's the middle of the month and we haven't hit it yet, so maybe we'll hit it next month? No. You go on and you do it. Let me tell you why we went direct in February. When I went back and checked how many people we put into business in January when it didn't happen, you know how many, and this was with only Ron Hale drawing circles all month, and Willie Bass was in the hospital 2 weeks that month, and he drew circles 2 weeks. Only 2 men in the whole organization drawing circles. You know how many sales kits those guys moved? 95. 95. Now, do you think if you put 95 people in your group, 95 distributors in your group this month, things would change? And do you think if it all depended on you, you could do it? Well, I'm here to tell you that you can. And it doesn't matter what you feel like. This business works if you work this business. And nobody can deny that. If you go out and work it, you're going to get so cotton-picking wealthy, it's not going to even be funny. And does that mean that you'll become materialistic? No. In this business, we use things to help people. In anything else, they use people to get things. If you want a business that's going to be nothing but people-oriented and helping people, because, see, you'll get the material things. I've got the material things now. The first year in the business, for 11 and a half years, Toby Hale didn't have a coat. Did I stay home in the warm? No. I went to church. I went to get groceries. I didn't have a coat. I'd go to church in my white tennis shoes that I always kept clean, with no pantyhose on, no sweater, no coat. This was 11 and a half years of what the military had helped us accomplish. People at church, Toby, you're going to freeze to death. Your legs are turning blue. And the way I was raised, I had so much pride. I said, not me, I'm country. I'm not cold. But I was cold, but I wouldn't admit it. I think because I wouldn't tell Ron I was cold. Because if Ron could have afforded to buy me a coat, he would have. And you don't tell your husband that you want something that he can't afford to give you because you don't want to strip the man of what pride he's got. And so I wouldn't tell nobody, not even Ron, I was cold. First year in this business, we got in January the 3rd. And Ron and I had an agreement. We never, ever, in 11 and a half years, gave each other gifts. Not anniversary, not birthday, and not Christmas. No, each other, we just didn't. Because we're enough for each other. And we didn't have the money to give gifts to each other. But we're enough for each other. And so we had a deal that we just didn't give each other gifts. And at Christmas time, I took $20, and we got our 3 kids presents, and we got my mom and dad, my 3 brothers, my 3 sisters presents, and I made a lot of them, and Ron's mom and dad and brother a present on $20. First year in Amway, first Christmas in Amway. Ron wakes up one morning and he takes our kids out and he says, you can't go with us. I've got something I need to do and the kids are going to help me. And he was gone for an hour, more than an hour, probably a couple hours. When he came back, the kids came in and Ron comes in and he's carrying this humongous box. It's a big silver box about this thick. It had a big red ribbon around it. And he came in, and my kids were jumping up and down. They were so excited. And he comes in, and he's holding this box, and he comes over to me, and he says, "This is yours." And I looked at that box, and I said, "No, no." And he said, "Toby, and this is yours." And I said, "Ron, no, we've got a deal. We don't give presents to each other." And he said, "Toby, and the kids and I went out and bought this for you." And he just put it in my arms. And he said, "Open it up and see if you like it." And I couldn't open it up. I couldn't get the ribbon off. I was shaking so hard. I couldn't get the stupid ribbon off. And so he takes it and he gets the ribbon off and he opens the box up. And he pulls out a gray wool coat out of that box. And it had a fake fur around the collar and a fake fur around the tail. And he put it on me. And the kids started dancing me around my living room. And I looked at him, and I saw such pride in his face. And he looked like he liked himself because he'd done this. And on Sunday morning, I put my brand new coat on and my tennis shoes and my bare legs, and I went to church with him. But I walked in with a man in his shirt sleeves because he didn't have a coat either except the military coat. And he didn't wear his military uniform to church. You see, I've had that kind of love since I was 17 years old. You just got to know what building this business can mean to a husband and wife that truly quit thinking about anything except each other and just grab hold of each other's hands and go out there and give it 100% of what you got.